If you or someone you know is always giving their time and attention to the needs of others, rarely talks about their own needs and struggles, is compassionate, people-pleasing, and occasionally explodes with resentment when they feel unappreciated, then they might be a type 2 helper. Also, if you've tested or been told by others that you're a 4, 6, or a 9, but you're not quite sure, then this video may actually help confirm or change the Enneagram type that you identify with most, because those three types, the 4, 6, and 9, often mistype themselves as type 2s. So with that said, here's a quick look at all the topics we'll cover in this overview of the Enneagram personality type 2. We'll start off by defining their major personality traits, then we'll go back in time a bit and cover their childhood experience. Then we'll get into the variations based on their wings. Next, we'll describe their movements of integration and disintegration based on how healthy they are. Then we'll get into their instinctual variants and triadic groups. And lastly, we'll end with some practical tips to help avoid the pitfalls of their personality and maintain a healthy sense of self. I'll even pepper in some silly topics at the very end, like spirit animals, spirit country, and some others, just to lighten up a bit and take a break from all the serious stuff we'll cover throughout most of the episode. All right, that's where we're going. Ready? Let's get into it. The Enneagram Type 2 is nicknamed the Helper because they are driven by a deep desire to give and receive love through acts of service. They are consumed with the need to be needed. Helpers can be extremely generous, nurturing, and compassionate. They're tricky though, because some helpers actually have a genuine desire to help people, and others just know that it looks good to help people, and all they really want is for people to love and affirm them. But like everything in the Enneagram system, it all depends on how healthy they are. 2s find their purpose in life by fulfilling the needs of others, which drives them to be very committed to their relationships. Most of the time, that's their close friends and immediate family, but 2s actually have pride in being able to love people from all walks of life. 2s are probably the most interested in relationships of all the Enneagram types because relationships are where you find and feel love. It's also why 2s are known for their love of pets because, let's face it, pets are the easiest way to feel as though you're both loved and needed. God bless those little guys. The 2's desire to serve and love others is often tainted by the 2's core flaw, which is their subtle sense of pride. Average 2s serve others because they inherently feel that they're in a better place than the people they're serving. 2s just feel as though they have something you and I need, and that could be something as harmless as a hug or a compliment, but whatever it is, it just means that they're currently in a better, stronger place than the person they're serving. 2s find their pride very hard to acknowledge and accept because they are well practiced when it comes to self-deception, especially if they have a 3-wing, which I'll get to later in the episode. 2s see themselves in a very positive light and believe that they have nothing but the best of intentions. However, insecure 2s set themselves up in a vicious cycle of codependent relationships by enabling self-destructive behaviors in loved ones in order to ensure that they'll always be in a position to provide and to be needed by a less capable person. Ultimately, though, healthy 2s are the perfect example of an unconditionally loving parent, and they are people you undoubtedly want in your corner when shit hits the fan because they have the deepest understanding of what it means to truly love somebody and how to make truly wise sacrifices for the good of others. All right, that's a brief flyover view of the major personality traits for the Type 2 helper. Now it's time to take a stroll down memory lane and discuss the formative experiences that Type 2s have in childhood that are still influencing their behaviors to this day. Disclaimer: you should know that when I discuss Enneagram childhood experiences, I am always taking into account both nature and nurture. We are all born with a specific temperament, psychologically speaking. That is undeniable. But the way our primary caregivers raise us has a great deal of influence on how that temperament gets expressed as adults. Okay, there's my disclaimer. In their earliest years, 2s embodied the traits of Type 4 individualists because they felt as though they were inherently special. They weren't so burdened by a sense of responsibility yet, and instead they felt way more whimsical and imaginative. This is why 2s go to 4 in health, or integration as it's known in the Enneagram, because it's a return to their most pure ego-free traits. However, the 2's defining childhood experience centers around feeling rejected by their father figure. This doesn't have to be some intense or even obvious rejection. And the father figure doesn't even have to be the biological father. It's more about the person who embodies the classic paternal traits of authority and guidance and strength. This experience of paternal rejection can be caused by things like having a sibling with special needs that draws the father's attention away, or some kind of financial hardship that makes the paternal figure focused on their job and working to provide financially for the family. Whatever it is, the two responded to all this by trying to play the role of the mom or the maternal figure in order to get dad's attention and affection. Deep down, they felt like if dad needs my help, then I'll always have dad's attention. Now, I know some twos may not resonate with this experience on a conscious level, but the undeniable experience on a subconscious level is that as children, twos felt like love had to be earned. And since twos love feeling loved, they learned to do everything they could to earn it. For twos, they'll live the rest of their lives with a deep desire to serve and be loved by the paternal or authoritative figures in their lives, and they'll do this by leaning into more traditionally maternal or supportive roles. Okay, that's the general childhood pattern for type 2 helpers. Now let's talk about how type 2s can look different from each other based on their wings. The theory behind the Enneagram wings is that we share traits with the Enneagram types directly to the left or to the right of our primary type. So type 2 share traits with type 1 reformers and type 3 achievers. However, you almost always have a stronger leaning to one wing over the other. Now, when 2s have a dominant one wing, they're called the servant. This is an interesting subtype because while 1s and 2s are both compliant types concerned with the rules and doing the right thing, they are polar opposites in the way they like to express themselves. 2s are in the heart triad, which I'll talk about more in this episode, but that makes them very emotional, dramatic, and highly interpersonal, whereas 1s are in the gut triad, so they're rigid, rational, and often impersonal. Think of it like emotions versus principles. The influence of the one wing makes servants more altruistic, thoughtful, sharp, and far more concerned with serving from behind the scenes than their counterpart, the 2-wing 3, who is rather flamboyant about their service. More on them in a sec. The one wing drives 2s to express their deep love for others through selfless acts of moral service. Again, it's about loving others by doing the right thing. Sometimes 2s with a one wing get mistyped as 6s because of their adherence to the rules and submission to authority. But the 2's core struggle is with a sense of shame rather than a subconscious wave of anxiety like the 6. It's not to say that 2s can't have intense bouts with anxiety, it's just not their driving force. Now, servants struggle in a few distinct ways. If you watch my episode on the type 1 reformer, then it won't surprise you to know that 2s with a one wing also struggle with being judgmental and controlling because of their pride, mixed with a strict sense of morality. Servants choose to work in the background because they believe it's more noble, but also because they're very uncomfortable fighting for attention. This sets them up to become really bitter because they long for people to see and appreciate their constant service, but they never speak up or show off in a way that would actually get them the attention they desire. They so badly want to feel like they're significant to those that they love or work with, but they often start to resent them for not loving them for all that they've done. Ironically, servants know that their bitterness is not morally justifiable, and so they repress it, and it can often cause stress-related ailments or even psychosomatic disorders in the body. On the healthy side, though, servants are the ones leading charities, nonprofits, volunteering after work, and becoming amazing parents and teachers. They readily give of their time and resources and can change people's lives through their warmth and kindness. All right. Let's move on to 2s with a dominant 3-wing. 2s with a 3-wing are called the host. Hosts express their love for people by sharing their talents, be it cooking, performing, or surprise, surprise, hosting events. This subtype is a social powerhouse, as both 2s and 3s are highly relational and highly energetic. The 3-wing adds heaps of charm and enthusiasm and adaptability to the 2's already inherent desire for human connection and relationship. It can even add a level of seduction, as 3s are political chameleons by nature. So hosts tend to have a keen eye for what attracts people to them, and then they know how to play their cards just right to draw in the most powerful or interesting people. In lower levels of health, though, average 2-wing 3s often care more about being perceived as friendly rather than actually being a friend, as one of their top fears is tied to losing social status. This is a huge difference between hosts and servants because servants care more about their morals than their social status. Hosts and servants both crave the approval of their peers. It's just that hosts are far more aggressive and open about seeking public approval. This can make them look incredibly vain, especially if they fall into some name dropping and not so subtle humble bragging. It can be hard to tell what hosts actually feel, as they often exaggerate their emotions or flatter those they want approval from. Hosts can be irrationally positive people that overlook hard truths just to keep the energy up and keep people smiling, even if they're dying on the inside. If the 2-wing 3 feels like they're being rejected or there's no hope of wooing someone over, they sometimes can erupt in shocking displays of verbal or even physical aggression. When they hit their breaking point, that strong interpersonal energy that they use to charm people is instead used to repel them. At their best, hosts provide opportunities to be entertained, to laugh, and to heal from some pretty deep pain by participating in communal experiences within a truly hospitable environment. All right, that's a wrap on the wings for the Type 2 helper. Now let's talk about the movements of integration and disintegration. The theory of integration and disintegration essentially describes that each Enneagram type takes on the traits of another type based on their level of health. If you actually look at the lines of the Enneagram, you can see that the Type 2 is connected to the Type 4 and the Type 8. So their movement of integration is to the Type 4 individualist, and their movement of disintegration is to the Type 8 challenger. So when 2s are not in a healthy state, they start to embody the most unhealthy characteristics of the Type 8 challenger. Since 2s normally repress their negative emotions or harsh reactions, this movement to 8 is pretty unmistakable. Type 8 is called the challenger because they are wired to move against things and against people in order to establish their identity and security. So when 2s disintegrate to 8, their patience finally deteriorates and they get bossy, dramatic, and super aggressive with anyone that doesn't seem to appreciate them or agree with them. Now in integration, when 2s are mature and grounded, they embody the healthiest characteristics of the Type 4 individualist. Type 4 individualists are masters at riding the emotional waves of life through all the good times and bad times. Whereas average Type 2 helpers usually try to put a positive spin on everything and are very uncomfortable with the dark side of life, this movement of integration to Type 4 looks like the helper becoming more at peace with the harsh reality of life, and they stop trying to give advice to people in pain, and instead they can just sit in the awkward silence of not knowing what to do or say to make a situation better. And much like the movement of disintegration to Type 8 brings up aggressive or negative emotions, so too does the movement of integration to Type 4. But in this case, the helper chooses to acknowledge and embrace those negative emotions rather than having them explode out subconsciously like a rocket. All right, that's a general overview of the movements of integration and disintegration for the Type 2 helper. Time to go a layer deeper and talk about their instinctual variants. The Enneagram instincts describe the most basic ways we function in our daily life. The pattern normally goes that we operate out of one primary instinct, then our secondary instinct really just serves the first, and the last instinct is usually repressed due to some formative experience we had growing up. So the 3 instincts are the self-preservation instinct, the social instinct, and the sexual instinct. These instincts lay on top of our personalities, so it's really important to know your primary instinct because everything about your Enneagram type is going to be filtered through your instinct. All right, with that bit of context, let's start out by describing Type 2 helpers that have a dominant self-preservation instinct. The self-preservation instinct is all about our physical or material well-being. So when an average Type 2 is driven by their self-preservation instinct, they tend to sacrifice their physical well-being in the service of others. The helper's core desire is to serve and feel needed by others, and this is often at the expense of what they themselves need. So if the 2's primary instinct is self-preservation, then their tendency will be to neglect their physical health, finances, and overall quality of their material possessions. Subconsciously, self-preservation 2s tend to resent that no one is taking care of them the way that they're taking care of other people. Many self-preservation 2s struggle with their weight because food or drink is how they reward themselves for the ways they sacrifice their needs for the goods of others. Self-preservation 2s can become hypochondriacs because they know their health is deteriorating and their anxiety is fed by their inability to ask for help. Again, the 2s struggle with a great deal of pride. At their best, though, self-preservation 2s actually become great at practicing self-care because they know that if they serve themselves, they'll be better at serving others, and they can create very hospitable environments in which they're willing to share any and all of their resources with anyone in need. Okay, now let's talk about 2s with a social instinct. Twos with a social instinct can often be mistyped for type 7 enthusiasts, especially if they have a three wing, because they exude positivity and they constantly coordinate group hangouts and love to travel on a regular basis. However, their core desire is way different than the type 7 that just loves having a good time for the sake of a good time. And instead, twos with a social instinct are driven to be seen and appreciated by people. So, taking on the role of the host or event planner gives them a built-in role within the group where they can never be rejected because after all, it's their freaking party. The social instinct ensures that twos will never be left out, and most of the time this instinct is paired with the three wing, which is why they're called the host. Twos with a social instinct are very concerned about connecting with the most influential, powerful, or famous people in their ecosystem. This can make them look a little gross to other type twos, especially more introverted twos with a one wing, because it looks like a shameless attempt to attach themselves to prominent figures rather than appreciating those who work behind the scenes like the two-wing one does. Social twos can take advantage of folks, either intentionally or unintentionally, by constantly asking for favors from people they see as lower worth individuals in order to serve those that they see as higher worth individuals. It's all driven by the social two's deep desire to impress people. They feel insignificant at their core, and so they name drop, perform a special skill, or give out unsolicited advice to their peers so that people will be wowed by all that the two knows or has accomplished or is connected to. The big problem with this behavior is that most people see right through it. And the more that type 2s keep toxic people around them just because they're rich or famous or attractive, the more everyone else slowly starts to back away from the two, and eventually they manifest their core fear of being rejected by their community. On the bright side though, when social 2s are healthy, they are masters at staying connected to people they've met, and they are tireless in their pursuit of true and vibrant community. Okay, that's the type 2 with a social instinct. Last up is a 2 with a sexual instinct. Twos with a sexual instinct are what the Enneagram Institute calls true intimacy junkies. They want intimacy with you on a physical, mental, emotional, and even a spiritual level. Sexual twos take what social twos do with groups, and instead they focus it on one or two key individuals. They idolize the people they choose and make that relationship responsible for all their self-worth. This makes sexual twos very prone to jealousy and clinginess. It also makes them neglect their own sexual identity in order to satisfy the people that they love. Sexual twos can have a really hard time receiving sexual pleasure because it feels so overtly selfish. On the flip side, they give sexual pleasure not out of a sense of true love, but out of a desperate fear of rejection. This is where I, as a man, have sympathy for young women who feel like they have to give up their bodies to keep the attention of young men when they really just want someone they can share their thoughts and feelings with. Sexual twos need to understand that when they're stressed out or sad, that they will tend to never feel close enough or always feel disconnected from the ones that they love. Their reaction to this may be to rebuke their loved ones for not caring enough, but the solution is not to become a low-key stalker or a bossy jerk. It's the exact opposite. And sexual twos are at their best when they realize that love and intimacy are fostered in an atmosphere of freedom, unhurried time, and as few expectations as possible. Overall, sexual twos are very committed, interested, and dedicated to their loved ones. They really set the standard for all ride or die relationships. Okay, that's a wrap on the instincts. Now let's dive into where the twos fall in each of the Enneagram triads. When it comes to the triads, folks usually only talk about the triad centers, what they call the triad, but there are actually 3 triads within the Enneagram. These triads group personality types based on shared behaviors, and they can really help you understand why you're so similar and aligned with other types in one area, and then why you're so different in another. The 3 Enneagram triads are the triad centers, the harmonic triad, and the Hornevian triad. Now, the triad centers describe the primary way each personality type processes their experiences. It's actually the key to all your biggest barriers to self-awareness. And the 3 groups are the head group, the heart group, and the gut group. Surprise, surprise, twos are in the heart group alongside type 3 achievers and type 4 individualists. Heart types process the world around them primarily through their emotions. While each heart type is guided by their emotions, they're often unaware of their true feelings because they have a great deal of shame surrounding their identity. For twos, they're ashamed of their emotional needs, so they tend to repress any negative feelings in favor of overexpressing positive ones. They present an image to the world around them that everything is okay, even if their house is going up in flames. This also ties into their place within the harmonic triad. And the harmonic triad is all about the way we cope with pain, uncertainty, or trauma. The three groups within the harmonic triad are the competency group, the reactive group, and the positive outlook group. Twos are in the positive outlook group alongside type 7 enthusiasts and type 9 peacemakers. Twos cope with pain and setbacks in general by saying, hey, let's look on the bright side of things. Could be way worse. Cheer up. Don't even worry about it. Sometimes that's an extremely helpful form of positivity and gratitude. And other times it's a really annoying self-deceptive way of escaping reality so you don't have to admit how dark and difficult life can be. All right, last is the Hornevian triad. The Hornevian triad describes the way each type behaves in social situations. The three groups are the compliant group, the assertive group, and the withdrawn group. Type 2s are in the compliant group, along with type 1 reformers and type 6 loyalists. Compliant types like to focus on appeasing authority in social situations, and 2s do this by serving the leader of the group. 2s are the ones helping to clean up at the end of a party even though you didn't ask them to, because they want to ensure that you'll invite them back. They're especially attuned to helping whoever is in charge of a given situation, which can make them look like 6s at times because they're very loyal to leadership and authority. Again, this ties into the childhood experience of being a servant to the paternal or authoritative figure in the family. All right, that's where 2s fall in each of the three Enneagram triads. Since we're almost done, and since the Enneagram is incredibly critical about the ways our personality can go haywire, I like to end with some practical reminders of ways 2s can keep their ego in check and continue to become healthier, wholehearted people. Okay, 2s, first up is self-care. It's like the old analogy of how you're supposed to put on your own oxygen mask first, during a plane crash, and then you help the people next to you. Some of the unhealthiest people I know are always trying to help other people because it's a form of avoiding your own problems. So be sure that you're taking regular care of yourself, not just splurging on a spa day once a year. Intense swings between running yourself into the ground and then vegging out on the couch doesn't really produce long-term growth or healing. You need regular practices of self-care where you get alone with yourself so you can feel your feelings and acknowledge your own needs. Alone time is also key because you'll need it to check your motives. 2s will often lie to themselves about why they're helping others, so alone time can help 2s be honest about why they're serving others and what they really expect in return. It's almost better to not serve someone at all than to try to manipulate them into needing or loving you. Next up, before 2s begin serving, it's really important to ask what people actually need. If people say, "No thanks, I'm good," then listen to them. 2s can often pester people like a nagging parent, hovering around, searching for things to do for them. It may be a profound act of patience at times, but it's really important to let people ask for help. Sometimes it's really sweet that you intuited what they needed, but it can also stunt people's emotional growth because they never learn how to be vulnerable enough to ask for help. But that's another issue that 2s can be aware of, which is creating codependent relationships. I know I mentioned this earlier in the episode, but 2s can often keep people feeling weak in order to feel needed. Part of truly loving someone is allowing them to be strong, to be independent, and to potentially leave the relationship if that's what they need. 2s can be really controlling, all under the guise of, "I'm just trying to help, I'm just concerned." When people push back on the 2's control, it's vital that the 2 not use their long list of generous deeds as a weapon. 2s should have a big, loud radar for anything that comes out of their mouth that sounds like, "I can't believe you would do XYZ after all that I did for you." Scorekeeping is like cancer for the type 2 ego. And if you let it spread, it will literally ruin the greatest gift you have to offer. All right, that's all I got for you. I know these core type overviews are a lot to get through, so kudos to you for making it all the way to the end. And as a reward, we'll pull up for a minute and have some fun with a type 2 personality by talking about your spirit animal, your spirit country, and some famous type 2s you may know. When it comes to a country that represents the type 2 personality best, think about warm, home-cooked meals and a deep sense of hospitality. If you guessed Italy, then bravo, you're 1 for 1. Next up is the type 2 spirit animal, and I feel like this should be a super easy guess because it's the cat. I'm just kidding. It's the puppy, but more specifically, the licking puppy, and the donkey is also a suitable answer. Okay. Last up, when it comes to some famous type 2s, there's Desmond Tutu and Mother Teresa in the real world. And then as far as fictional characters go, I'd say y'all have the marvelous Miss Maisel and my personal favorite, Ted Lasso. Oh, and in the Marvel Universe, it's none other than your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Okay, friends, that's a wrap on this personality type overview for type 2 helpers. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope it helps you understand type 2s a bit better. And if you are a type 2, I hope it left you with some helpful perspective on who you are and how to continually grow into your best self. If you like this episode, it would mean a whole lot to me if you would hit that like button, share with your friends, and subscribe to the channel if you feel so inclined. Also, if there's something I mentioned that didn't make sense or you want to learn more about, just leave me a comment and I'll do my best to respond to anything you send my way. As always, I'm your host, Colton Simmons, and I hope to see you on another episode of You've Got a Type. Basically, any of these episodes, really. Yeah, any of them. Go for it. Just, you know how it works. It's YouTube.